All right. Now we're going to get into the meat and potatoes, right? We're going to talk about medical expense insurance. Now, let's see here. Let's just jump right into this, all right? So we're on page 294. Why? Because NAFA loves putting things out of order, because we should always start with disability income in chapter 18, go to chapter 25, then back to 24, then down to 19, and then go back to chapter 17 before we even discuss the beginning, but you know, whatever. We are on page 294, top of the page, 17.1, purpose of medical expense insurance. Now here, what I want you to do is I want you to highlight that first sentence, okay? Medical expense insurance provides financial protection against the cost of medical care for accidents and sickness. I actually circled financial protection because insurance does not help prevent you from having issues that happen. Like, yeah, we can do a little bit of preventive maintenance, right? But it is what it is, okay? So all insurance does is provide financial protection. That is a reoccurring theme in this class. What I want you to do now is, like we just highlighted, medical expense insurance provides financial protection against the cost of medical care and accidents and sickness. But I guess the question here is, what is medical care? I don't even want you to highlight all this, right? Because medical care is what's under there, right? Hospital, physician, surgical, drugs, nursing and convalescent, diagnostic, laboratory, rehabilitative, dental, physical therapy. Why don't I want you to highlight all those? Because the next sentence is what I want you to highlight: all medical treatment and services. So what is medical expense? What does medical expense cover? All medical treatment and services. Now, next line down, dead center, services and treatments covered. Next line down, depends on the policy. Okay? Underneath that, two different policy plans. Right under the two different policy plans, if you notice, they have it all on lowercase: basic medical expense, medical insurance, or major medical insurance. I crossed those out. I want you to go directly under the two different policy plans where they put the capitalized headline there. Basic medical insurance limits coverage. Okay? Major medical insurance is more comprehensive. Basic. If we're buying a car, basic means I gotta roll my own windows up, right? If it was comprehensive, comprehensive is like the sun, the moon, the stars. Everything is covered. Okay? So yeah, highlight major medical insurance is more comprehensive. Why don't you just highlight that word a little further down the sentence, complete. Okay? Then, right afterwards, I feel this should have been a different paragraph, but that's neither here nor there. Highlight limits of coverage. At the end of that sentence, expressed, and then take the rest, on a per cause, per year, or per lifetime basis, or combination of several or all of these. Okay. Now let's go over to 17.1, the reimbursement versus fixed rate approach. Here, I want you to highlight. Go to the last line in that first paragraph there and highlight the distinction can be clarified with an example. And then right under that, in the next paragraph, reimbursement type medical expense policy. Let's go right under that, towards the end of the second sentence there. Hospitalized for 10 days and incurs expenses totaling $10,000. Policy would provide a benefit of $10,000. The expense incurred. Reimbursement. Okay? Watch how easy this gets. If that was reimbursement and you incurred $10,000 and they gave you $10,000, is the flat benefit approach or the flat rate approach, is that going to give you more money or less money? Less. Flat. You picked a predetermined amount, right? Well, that predetermined amount here, let's highlight this. This is the third paragraph down. Medical expense policy that provides a fixed rate. What I want you to highlight here in the second line, $100 per day for hospitalization. So in that third paragraph, medical expense policy that provides a fixed rate, $100 a day for hospitalization. Hospitalized for 10 days, policy will provide benefits of $1,000. Medical expense policies that pay a fixed rate provide the insured with a stated benefit amount for each day he is confined to a hospital as an inpatient. So, boom, what do we got here? Reimbursement is obviously a little bit more comprehensive, right? You incur $10,000 worth of expenses, they give you $10,000 worth of expenses. Flat is fixed. If you chose $100 a day benefit, then you just get $100 a day benefit. Now, the average cost of a hospital room these days is right at about $280, $380 a day, depending on where you live. Okay? I'll tell you, fixed rate really isn't that bad because, you know, you live in Orlando. I think we have a $280 average cost per day. So I could get a fixed rate that's getting me somewhere in that ballpark. So it really just depends on what type of coverage you want, but we're not really covering that here. Now, in the next we're going to go into, let's talk about, we said that we have basic medical expense and a major, right? So 17.2, let's talk about this basic medical expense plan. Highlight that first line right there. Basic medical expense insurance is sometimes called first dollar insurance because ... Move over to the end of that second sentence. It provides benefits up front without, a little later on in that sentence, a deductible. Okay. 1, 2, skip 2 lines down, start there. Basic medical expense policies limit the type and duration of services covered and dollar amounts paid or reimbursed. So what do we have? 1, 2, 3 lines up from the bottom. Basic medical expense policies limit the type and duration of services covered and dollar amounts paid or reimbursed. Major medical plans not as limiting. All right. Let's go over to the next page, 295. Top of that page. Policies classify their coverage according to the categories of care: hospital expense, surgical expense, and physicians, which is non-surgical. That would be your primary care physician, right? You go to a clinic, that's your non-surgical. That person's not the one that's opening you up. That's the person doing the diagnostic. That's the person who makes sure that, you know, like at BMW, I go and they do my checkup. They just make sure everything is running, right? They don't. That's what that is. So let's talk about these. 17.2.1, basic hospital expense. Let's just take that first line right there. Basic hospital expense insurance reimburses the policy owner for the cost of hospital confinement. Okay? If you're wondering why I keep flipping my iPad, for some reason my photos keep shifting. It does that from time to time. I'm pretty sure it's a user error, so I'm not gonna start beefing. All right. That's all we needed from basic hospital expense. Now let's drop down to the next one, 17.2.11, daily room and board. Well, it doesn't take a genius to figure out what this is covering if it's hospital expense, right? Hospital is just the facility. It's the hotel for sick people. All we're covering in the hospital is nothing more than the accommodations and a couple of little amenities here, right? daily room and board. I want you to highlight that first line. Basic hospital expense policies cover the daily cost of room and board. That is it. Let's jump over to the next one, 17212. Miscellaneous expenses. We're just going to identify this. I don't know if they're going to go into it, but it is kind of covered under basic hospital expense. Miscellaneous expenses. In that first paragraph, go to the second sentence. Covered miscellaneous expenses include drugs, x-rays, anesthesia, lab fees, dressings, and the use of the operating room and supplies. Okay, I'm going to jump over the second paragraph. Let's go to the third. First line right there. Physician services are not covered under a basic hospital expense policy. Next one, right? Now we're done with the hospital, right? What you got to think about is you got to think about that song. Grandma got run over by a reindeer. Let's just say you were on the scene. You witnessed grandma, somebody else's grandma, not your grandma. That'd be too traumatic. You witnessed somebody else's grandma get run over by a reindeer. Okay? First thing you do, call 911. Where do they take grandma? To the hospital. When she gets to the hospital, I already told you, the hospital is nothing but a hotel, right? What do we need? A doctor. So, basic surgical expense. Why wasn't it physician? Because that would be like your primary care person, right? Regardless. Next, we're at 17222. Basic surgical expense. Grandma's now at the hospital. We need somebody to help her. Well, let's just say she needs surgery. Basic surgical expense policies provide coverage for the cost of a surgeon's services in or out of the hospital. Included coverage, surgeon fees, anesthesiologist, and post-operative care. Okay? Let's see. Now continue over to the next page. At the top, 296. 3 different approaches used by insurers. Highlight that. Directly under that, determining benefits payable. So there's 3 different approaches that insurers use to define the benefits payable to the insured person. The first one, highlight surgical schedule. Second one, reasonable and customary approach. Third, relative value scale. Okay? Let's talk about these. Super simple. 17221, we're right there at the top. 296. First line, under the surgical schedule method, every procedure is assigned a dollar amount by the insurer. Go down kind of towards the end, but like dead center. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines down, dead center. If the surgeon bill is more than the allowed charge, right under that dead center, up to the insured to pay the difference. If less, the insurer will pay only the amount billed. Payment will never exceed the amount charged. So like how Aflac's talking about they pay you directly, that's what they're saying. Whatever the bill is what they're going to pay, and that's under the surgical schedule. If it's above what was allotted, then you are responsible for it. The second version of determining benefits payable is going to be that reasonable and customary approach. This one makes so much sense, right? So highlight that bold right there, reasonable and customary approach. And then skip the line under it, the third line, and go to the fourth line. Expenses compared to what is deemed reasonable and customary for the geographic part of the country where the surgery is performed. Okay? What that means is, let's just say you got to get a surgery in Iowa. Okay? Or in Miami. Which one's going to be more expensive? Miami. Reasonable and customary approach is taking the cost of that surgery for that area and assigning it that way, okay? Let's just take this towards the end of that paragraph. If the charge is more, I'm on the second line from the bottom, dead center. If the charge is more, patient must absorb the difference. The last one is the relative value scale, right? So take that, highlight that first line right there, the relative value scale. And then right under that, instead of a flat dollar amount assigned to every surgical procedure, a set of points is assigned. So it's just like the surgical schedule, except they assign points, like if it's a timeshare or something, right? Let's skip the second paragraph, go down to the third paragraph. How are benefit amounts determined? Highlight that. And then right under that, dollar per point amount, known as the conversion factor. So they issued points, right? But in the surgical schedule, they said how much they would pay. Under the relative value, they just changed how much they would pay. They put it into points, and then they basically tell you how many points go to a dollar, okay? That's it. That's it right there. That's all we need under that relative value scale. Now the last one on the next page, page 297, basic physicians, non-surgical expense. Basic physician, guys, your clinic, your primary care physician, the person that says, pushes you right here, be like, oh, you got a poop, or goes, okay, cough. That's your primary care physician, all right? Not your surgeon. Non-surgical, all right? So go ahead and take this first line right here. Basic physician's expense insurance provides benefits for non-surgical physician services. Include office visits, care by a physician while hospitalized for non-surgical reasons. And that, my friends, concludes this section. When we come back to the dojo, we're going to continue with medical expense insurance, but we're going to dive into the comprehensive side, the part that includes everything. Because what I just identified was basic. Basic has limits. That's why it's first dollar insurance, right? Comprehensive asks you for a deductible. Why? Because they're going to cover you for everything. They're not going to nickel and dime you for nothing. Basic expense, I'm not saying that they're going to nickel and dime you. I'm just saying that they have limits, okay? Now, if I was going to limit you, could I ask you to pay up front? It doesn't make any sense. That's why basic medical expenses first dollar, because the limits mean that there's no need for an elimination period. There's no need for a deductible because I'm only covering you up until this much. That's what you really need to understand with basic versus comprehensive. And basic, everything is a la carte. You can have hospital without surgical or physician services. What does that mean? It means that your room and board in the hospital is covered, but your surgeon's not. It means that the doctor's not covered. It also means that if that was the way you were going down with this, all right, so they go ahead and they pay your hospital expense. What if you did need a surgeon and you did need somebody to check up on you? Well, you could be paying the surgeon bill and you could be paying the doctor bill for coming in and say, hey, how you feeling after that surgery? Okay, here's my bill, right? Comprehensive, everything is covered. And we'll get into that next. I hope you guys feel comfortable here, because if you don't, I can't make it more simple. It's probably you, not me. Anyway, on that note, I'm out. That's it.